The space between stars was cold and empty, filled only with the distant light of suns that burned millions of miles away. In this darkness, the trade routes that connected different worlds were like highways in the void. Ships moved along these paths every day, carrying goods and people from one planet to another. The most important of these routes ran between the Kepler system and the Vega system. This path had been safe for over 300 years. No pirates bothered the ships here, no wars had touched this space. The reason for this peace was simple. The Zephyrian Empire controlled everything in this area of space. The Zephyrians were tall, thin creatures with skin that looked like blue crystal. Their ships were massive things that could destroy entire moons if they wanted to. They had ruled this part of space for so long that no one even remembered a time when they had not been in charge. Other alien races feared them. Some worshipped them, all obeyed them. On this particular day, a small human ship was moving slowly through the trade route. The ship was called the UES Defiant, and it did not look like much. It was a simple rectangular box with engines on the back and a few small weapon ports on the sides. The metal hull was gray and worn, showing its age. Anyone who looked at it would think it was just another cargo ship, probably carrying food or supplies to some distant colony. Inside the ship, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair on the bridge. He was a man in his 40s with brown hair and calm blue eyes. He had been flying ships for over 20 years, and he knew space better than most people knew their own neighborhoods. Today he was wearing a simple blue uniform that had seen better days. His crew of 12 people worked quietly around him, checking instruments and making sure everything was running smoothly. The ship was carrying medical supplies to a human colony called Colony 7. The cargo hold was filled with boxes of medicine, vaccines, and equipment that sick children needed to get better. It was important work, but it was also dangerous work. Colony 7 was in disputed territory, a place where different alien races argued about who owned what. Lieutenant Amy Collins sat at the weapons station, her fingers moving across the control panel. She was younger than the captain, maybe 30 years old, with short red hair and green eyes that missed nothing. She looked like any other weapons officer, but she was much more than that. She had training that most people in the galaxy had never heard of. At the engineering station, Chief Engineer Pete Hansen monitored the ship's power systems. He was a big man with gray hair and hands that were always stained with grease. To anyone watching, he was just keeping the engines running and the lights on. But Hansen was actually doing something much more complex. He was routing power through systems that looked like simple life support but were actually something else entirely. Dr. Lisa Martinez worked in the medical bay, checking the supplies they were carrying. She was a small woman with dark hair and gentle hands that had saved more lives than she could count. She cared deeply about the sick children who were waiting for the medicine in their cargo hold. She did not know that her simple medical supplies were about to become the center of a conflict that would change everything. The trouble began when the Defiant sensors detected ships approaching. Captain Morrison looked at his display screen and saw 12 massive vessels moving toward them. The ships were beautiful in a deadly way, made of what looked like blue crystal that caught and reflected the light of distant stars. Each ship was 10 times bigger than the Defiant. "Zephyrian Patrol Fleet," reported Lieutenant Collins, her voice steady and professional. "They're moving to intercept us." Captain Morrison nodded. He had expected this. The Zephyrians stopped every ship that passed through their territory, especially human ships. They considered humans to be a primitive species that needed supervision. They treated human vessels the way adults might treat children playing with toys. The largest of the Zephyrian ships moved closer to the Defiant. It was a massive dreadnought, bristling with weapons that could turn a planet into dust. Its hull was smooth and perfect, without a single mark or scratch. Everything about it spoke of power and superiority. A message came through the communication system. The voice was cold and mechanical, translated from the alien language into words that humans could understand. "Primitive vessel, you will submit to cargo inspection or be destroyed. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded." Captain Morrison looked around his bridge. His crew was calm, but he could see the tension in their faces. They all knew what Zephyrian inspections were like. The aliens would go through their ship, breaking things and treating the humans like animals. Sometimes crew members were arrested for no reason other than the aliens' amusement. "Send a response," Morrison told his communication officer. "Tell them we comply with their request." The Defiant's engines powered down, and the ship drifted in space like a dead whale. The Zephyrian dreadnought moved alongside it, and smaller ships surrounded them. To the aliens, this was routine. They had done this thousands of times before with hundreds of different species. Humans were just another primitive race that needed to be kept in line. What the Zephyrians did not know was that they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. A docking tube extended from the alien ship and connected to the Defiant's airlock. The sound of the connection echoed through the human ship like a death knell. In a few minutes, the Zephyrians would board their vessel and discover the medical supplies. They would probably confiscate everything, leaving the sick children on Colony 7 to die. Captain Morrison stood up from his chair and straightened his uniform. "Remember," he said quietly to his crew, "we're just a simple cargo ship carrying medical supplies. Nothing more, nothing less." His crew nodded, but their eyes held a different story. They knew exactly what their ship really was, and they knew what would happen if the Zephyrians pushed too hard. The airlock opened, and the aliens stepped aboard. The Zephyrian soldiers walked through the airlock like they owned the ship. There were 6 of them, each one nearly 7 feet tall, with thin bodies that moved with alien grace. Their skin was the color of blue crystal, and their eyes glowed with a cold white light. They wore no uniforms, but their bodies were covered in some kind of living armor that shifted and moved as they walked. Commander Veltar was their leader. He was taller than the others, with scars across his crystalline face that told of battles fought long ago. When he looked at the humans, his expression showed nothing but contempt. To him, these creatures were barely more intelligent than the animals on his homeworld. "Where is your captain?" Veltar asked, his voice coming through a translation device that made him sound like a machine. The device turned his alien clicks and whistles into words that humans could understand, but it could not hide the arrogance in his tone. Captain Morrison stepped forward. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Defiant. Welcome aboard our vessel, Commander." Veltar looked Morrison up and down like he was examining a piece of broken equipment. "You will address me as Supreme Commander Veltar. Your species has not earned the right to use casual titles." Morrison's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained calm. "Of course, Supreme Commander. How may we assist you today?" "You will assist by remaining silent unless spoken to," Veltar replied. He gestured to his soldiers. "Search this primitive vessel. Find out what cargo they carry and where they think they are going." The Zephyrian soldiers spread out through the ship, their heavy footsteps echoing in the corridors. They moved with the confidence of a species that had never been challenged. They opened doors without permission, pushed past crew members like they were furniture, and began examining everything with rough hands. Lieutenant Collins watched from her station as the aliens moved through the bridge. One of them was looking at her weapon controls, but the displays showed only basic systems. The alien saw simple laser batteries and basic shields, exactly what anyone would expect from a human cargo ship. He did not see the hidden systems that Collins had spent years learning to operate. In the engineering section, Chief Engineer Hansen continued working at his station while a Zephyrian soldier examined his equipment. The alien saw old-fashioned power generators and simple life support systems. He did not know that Hansen was actually monitoring quantum processors that were more advanced than anything the Zephyrians had ever built. The soldiers made their way to the cargo hold, where Dr. Martinez was organizing medical supplies. She had been working with these medicines for months, preparing them for the sick children on Colony 7. Each box contained vaccines, antibiotics, and equipment that could save lives. "What is this?" one of the soldiers asked, pointing at a container of pediatric medicine. "Medical supplies," Dr. Martinez replied. "They are for sick children on Colony 7. The soldier picked up the container and examined it with little care. The medicine inside was delicate and had to be kept at exact temperatures. One mistake could ruin everything and leave children to die. Commander Veltar entered the cargo hold and looked around at the boxes and containers. His glowing eyes moved from one item to another, and his expression grew darker with each passing moment. "Colony 7, he said slowly. "That is in disputed territory." Captain Morrison had followed the aliens to the cargo hold. "Yes, Supreme." "Commander, the colony requested these supplies, and we are delivering them." Veltar turned to face Morrison, and his crystalline features twisted into something that might have been anger. "Colony 7 is now under Zephyrian protection. Your species is not authorized to deliver supplies to worlds under our control. The request for medical aid came before your empire claimed the territory," Morrison replied carefully. "These are just medicines for sick children." "The timing is irrelevant," Veltar said. "Your primitive understanding of galactic law means nothing. Colony 7 belongs to the Zephyrian Empire now, and we will decide what supplies they receive." Dr. Martinez stepped forward, her face pale but determined. "Supreme Commander, please. These children are dying. They need these medicines to survive." Veltar looked at her like she was an insect that had dared to speak. "The survival of human offspring is not our concern. These supplies will be confiscated." "Confiscated?" Morrison's voice was still calm, but something had changed in his eyes. "On what authority?" "On the authority of the Zephyrian Empire," Veltar replied. "Your species requires supervision. You cannot be trusted to make decisions about territory that belongs to us." The alien soldiers began grabbing boxes of medical supplies and throwing them toward the cargo bay doors. They handled the delicate medicines like they were moving rocks, not caring if containers broke or if precious vaccines were destroyed. Dr. Martinez watched in horror as months of careful preparation were ruined in minutes. "Please," she said again. "Those medicines cost us everything we had. Without them, hundreds of children will die." "Then perhaps your species should have considered that before entering our territory," Veltar said coldly. One of the soldiers was moving a container of pediatric antibiotics when he dropped it. The container hit the floor and burst open, spilling medicine that had taken weeks to produce. Dr. Martinez moved quickly to try to save what she could, but the soldier pushed her aside with enough force to knock her down. "Stay back, primitive," the soldier said. Dr. Martinez hit the floor hard, her shoulder striking the metal deck. She cried out in pain, but the soldier did not seem to care. He continued throwing medical supplies around like they were garbage. Captain Morrison was at her side in an instant, helping her to her feet. "Are you hurt?" "I think my shoulder is dislocated," she said, tears in her eyes. But she was not crying from the pain. She was crying because she could see years of work being destroyed by creatures who did not care about human life. Morrison looked up at Commander Veltar, and for the first time, the alien saw something dangerous in the humans. "Eyes, your soldier just assaulted a member of my crew." "Your crew member interfered with official Zephyrian business," Veltar replied. "She is fortunate that our punishment was not more severe." Morrison stood up slowly, his hands clenched into fists. Around the cargo hold, his crew members had stopped what they were doing and were watching their captain. The atmosphere in the room had changed, like the air before a storm. "Supreme Commander," Morrison said, his voice now carrying a deadly quiet that made even the aliens pause. "I am asking you politely to leave my ship. Take your soldiers and go." Veltar laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You are asking us to leave? You have no authority here, primitive. We will take what we want and do what we please." "Then you have made a mistake," Morrison said softly. The captain reached for what looked like a simple communication device on his belt. To the aliens, it appeared to be nothing more than a basic emergency beacon. They had seen thousands of such devices on primitive ships throughout the galaxy. What they did not know was that they had just crossed a line that no one should ever cross. They had threatened human children and assaulted a human crew member. And now Captain Morrison was about to show them exactly what happened when someone made that mistake. Captain Morrison held the small device in his hand, his thumb hovering over what looked like a simple button. To the Zephyrian soldiers, it seemed like nothing more than a basic emergency beacon that might call for help from other human ships. They had seen such devices on hundreds of primitive vessels throughout the galaxy. Commander Veltar noticed the device and laughed again, that same sound like breaking glass. Are you calling for help, primitive? Do you think you're weak, human? Ships can challenge the might of the Zephyrian Empire? I am giving you one last chance to leave peacefully, Morrison replied, his voice still deadly quiet. Take your soldiers and go. Let us deliver these medicines to the children who need them. Veltar's glowing eyes narrowed. You dare to make demands of us? You are nothing but insects compared to our power. He gestured to his soldiers. Arrest. All of them. This entire crew will be taken to the labor camps as punishment for their insolence. The Zephyrian soldiers moved toward the human crew members, their hands reaching for weapons that could stun or kill. Dr. Martinez was still holding her injured shoulder, but she tried to step protectively in front of the medical supplies that had not yet been destroyed. No, Morrison said firmly. You will not take my crew anywhere. He pressed the button on the device. To the aliens, nothing seemed to happen. Their sensors detected what appeared to be a standard distress signal, the kind that would take weeks to reach any human authority. They had intercepted thousands of such signals over the years, and none had ever brought help fast enough to matter, but this was not a standard distress signal. The device in Morrison's hand contained technology that the Zephyrians had never seen before. It was a quantum entanglement communicator, capable of sending messages instantly across any distance in space. The signal did not travel through normal space at all. Instead, it used quantum mechanics to connect directly with Earth Defense Command. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Defiant, Morrison spoke into the device, his words being transmitted instantly across thousands of light years. We have a code black situation. Hostile alien force has boarded our vessel and assaulted crew members. They are destroying medical supplies meant for sick children on Colony 7, Zephyrian. Empire forces are attempting to arrest my entire crew. Request immediate authorization for Protocol Omega. The response came back in less than 2 seconds, carried by the same quantum technology that made the communication possible. Authorization granted, Captain Morrison. You are cleared to defend your crew and cargo by any means necessary. Show them what happens when they threaten humanity. Morrison closed the device and looked up at Commander Veltar. Supreme Commander, I strongly advise you to reconsider your actions. Veltar was growing impatient with what he saw as human stupidity. Your pathetic call for help will bring nothing. Even if other human ships come, they will arrive too late to save you. He signaled to his soldiers. Take them all, use force if necessary. The soldiers moved forward, raising their weapons. But as they did, something changed in the humans around them. The crew members who had seemed frightened and helpless moments before now stood straighter, their eyes filled with a determination that the aliens had never seen before. Lieutenant Collins had returned to her station on the bridge, where she began pressing buttons on control panels that the Zephyrians had examined and dismissed as primitive. To their sensors, she was simply shutting down non-essential systems in preparation for surrender. They could not detect the quantum processors that were coming online throughout the ship. Chief Engineer Hansen was also at his station, routing power through systems that looked like simple life support. The aliens had scanned these systems and found nothing but basic environmental controls. They did not know that Hansen was actually activating the most advanced power grid that humanity had ever built. Throughout the ship, hidden systems began to wake up. Quantum computers that had been disguised as simple navigation equipment started processing millions of calculations per second. Exotic matter containment fields that looked like cargo containers began generating energy that could power entire cities. Weapon systems that appeared to be basic maintenance tools prepared to reveal their true nature. The Zephyrians detected massive energy readings throughout the human ship, but their instruments could not identify what was causing them. According to everything they knew about human technology, the primitive vessel should not be capable of generating such power. What is happening? Veltar demanded, looking around the cargo hold as lights began to flicker and change color. I warned you, Morrison said calmly. I told you to leave peacefully. You chose to threaten my crew and destroy medicine meant for dying children. On the bridge, more Zephyrian ships were approaching. The original patrol of 12 vessels had grown as Commander Veltar called for reinforcements. 3 massive dreadnoughts now surrounded the small human ship, along with 9 smaller vessels. Each alien ship was armed with weapons that could destroy planets. Sir, reported one of Veltar's officers through his communication device, we are detecting impossible energy signatures from the human vessel. Our instruments cannot identify the source. Veltar pressed a button on his own communicator. All ships, prepare to destroy the human vessel if they show any signs of resistance. These primitives are somehow generating power beyond their capabilities. Morrison heard the alien communication and shook his head sadly. You still do not understand. This is not about power, Supreme Commander. This is about what happens when you threaten the people we are sworn to protect. The captain looked around at his crew. Dr. Martinez was still injured, but she was standing proudly beside the medical supplies she had worked so hard to prepare. Lieutenant Collins was at her station, ready to operate systems that could reshape the battlefield. Chief Engineer Hansen was monitoring power levels that would have been impossible just a few years ago. All crew members prepare for combat operations. Morrison announced over the ship's communication system. We have been authorized to use all necessary force to protect our cargo and complete our mission. Commander Veltar realized that something was very wrong. The humans were not acting like a defeated enemy. They were acting like predators who had been given permission to hunt. Impossible, he said, his glowing eyes wide with confusion. You are primitives. Your technology is centuries behind ours. You cannot possibly threaten the Zephyrian Empire. Morrison looked at the alien commander with something that might have been pity. Supreme Commander, you are about to learn why humans have survived and thrived in a galaxy full of species that consider us primitive. You are about to discover that our greatest weapon is not our technology. Then what is it? Veltar demanded. Our refusal to let anyone hurt the people we protect, Morrison replied. Lieutenant Collins, bring all systems online. Show them what the UES Defiant really is. The lights throughout the ship suddenly blazed brighter, and the hull began to vibrate with barely contained energy. The Zephyrian soldiers looked around in growing fear as they realized that they were not aboard a simple cargo ship. They were standing inside a weapon of war. The transformation began slowly, like a sleeping giant awakening from a long dream. Throughout the UES Defiant, systems that had been hidden beneath layers of false metal and fake components started to reveal themselves. The ship that had looked like a simple cargo vessel was shedding its disguise piece by piece. Lieutenant Collins sat at her station, her fingers moving across control panels that now glowed with colors the Zephyrians had never seen before. The aliens had examined these same controls just minutes earlier and found nothing but basic navigation equipment. Now they were watching impossible displays of power and technology. Weapon systems coming online, Collins reported, her voice calm and professional. Primary power at 60% and climbing. Defensive shields activated. Commander Veltar stared at the human woman in disbelief. Weapon systems? You have no weapons except primitive laser batteries. Collins looked up at him with a small smile. Sir, with respect, you have no idea what we have. On the bridge, Chief Engineer Hansen was monitoring power levels that should have been impossible for any ship, especially one the size of the Defiant. The energy readings on his displays showed output that could power entire space stations. Captain, Hansen called out, all primary systems are online. Exotic matter cores are stable and ready for full power operation. Exotic matter cores? Veltar's voice cracked slightly. That technology does not exist? Our greatest scientists have only theorized about such things. Captain Morrison turned to face the alien commander. Supreme Commander, there are many things about humanity that you do not understand. We have been letting you believe we are primitive because it suited our purposes. But when you threaten Our people and destroy medicine meant for dying children, the game changes. Outside the ship, the Zephyrian fleet was detecting energy signatures that defied all known physics. The small human vessel was generating more power than their largest dreadnoughts. Sensors that had been built to detect any possible threat were screaming warnings about energy levels that should not exist. "All ships, this is Fleet Commander Zex High," came a voice over the Zephyrian communications. "We are reading impossible power levels from the human vessel. How is this possible?" Commander Veltar activated his communicator with shaking hands. "Fleet Commander, the humans appear to have technology beyond our understanding. They are not the primitives we believe them to be." "Impossible," Zex High replied. "Our intelligence reports show that human technology is centuries behind ours. They barely have faster than light travel." On the Defiance bridge, Morrison listened to the alien communications with growing sadness. "You see, Supreme Commander, that is exactly what we wanted you to think. While you were busy looking down on us as primitives, we were building things that would give you nightmares." The ship's hull began to change around them. Metal plates that had looked old and worn started to slide apart, revealing gleaming surfaces underneath. What had appeared to be simple cargo containers were opening to show complex machinery that hummed with barely contained energy. Dr. Martinez watched in amazement as the medical bay transformed around her. Equipment that she had thought were simple. Supply cabinets opened to reveal advanced systems she had never seen before. Even the injured shoulder that had been hurting her was being scanned by medical devices that seemed to come from nowhere. "Doctor," Morrison said over the communication system, "please move to the emergency medical station. Things are about to get very dangerous." The Zephyrian soldiers in the cargo hold were backing away from the humans, their weapons raised but their confidence shaken. They had come aboard expecting to arrest a crew of primitive cargo haulers. Instead, they found themselves facing people who showed no fear and technology that should not exist. "You will surrender immediately," Veltar ordered, but his voice no longer carried the same arrogance it had before. "The Zephyrian Empire will not be intimidated by human tricks." "These are not tricks," Morrison replied. "Lieutenant Collins, show the Supreme Commander what a real weapon system looks like." Collins pressed a series of buttons, and part of the ship's hull near the cargo bay became transparent. Through the clear section, everyone could see into space where the Zephyrian fleet waited. But more importantly, they could see the weapons that were emerging from the Defiance hull, massive gun barrels extended from hidden compartments, each one larger than the Zephyrian soldiers had thought possible. Energy weapons that glowed with their own inner light rotated into position. Arrays of missile launchers opened like deadly flowers, revealing ordnance that could crack moons. "By the sacred crystals," whispered one of the Zephyrian soldiers, "what kind of ship is this?" "This is the UES Defiant," Morrison answered. "She is humanity's first deployed Phantom-class stealth destroyer. She was built to look like a helpless cargo ship while carrying enough firepower to destroy entire fleets." Commander Veltar's crystalline skin had turned a pale blue color that showed his fear. "Stealth destroyer?" But our sensors showed nothing. "You appeared completely harmless." "That was the point," Morrison said. "We built her to be invisible to your scanners. Every system on this ship is designed to hide what we really are until the moment we choose to reveal ourselves." The alien fleet outside was now in full panic. Their sensors were detecting weapon systems that were more advanced than anything in their arsenal. The small human ship that they had surrounded was suddenly the most dangerous thing in the star system. "Fleet Commander," Veltar called into his communicator, "we need immediate reinforcement. The human vessel is not what it appears to be." "All ships, open fire," came the reply. "Destroy the human vessel before it can use those weapons." The Zephyrian fleet began charging their weapons, preparing to unleash enough destructive power to turn the Defiant into scattered atoms. 12 massive warships focused their attention on the single human vessel, confident that even advanced human technology could not withstand such an assault. Morrison looked at the tactical display that showed the alien ships preparing to fire. Supreme Commander, this is your last chance. Order your fleet to stand down and leave immediately. Never, Veltar snarled, his fear turning to rage. The Zephyrian Empire bows to no one, especially not to primitive humans. Then you have chosen your fate, Morrison said sadly. Lieutenant Collins, activate all defensive systems. Prepare to show them what happens when someone threatens human children. The space around the Defiant began to shimmer as energy shields came online. But these were not the simple barrier shields that most species used. These were conversion shields that could turn enemy weapons' fire into power for the ship's own systems. All Zephyrian ships, fire at will. Commanded Fleet Commanders XI, 12 warships opened fire simultaneously, unleashing enough destructive energy to vaporize a small planet. The combined firepower of an entire alien fleet focused on the single human vessel, confident that nothing could survive such an attack. The energy beams and plasma bolts struck the Defiant's shields and simply vanished, absorbed by technology that turned the attack into fuel for the ship's own weapons. The more the aliens fired, the stronger the human ship became. Morrison watched the tactical display as his ship's power levels climbed higher and higher. Supreme Commander, you have just made the last mistake of your life. You chose to attack a human vessel carrying medicine for sick children. Now you will face the consequences of that choice. The UES Defiant, no longer disguised as a simple cargo ship, prepared to show the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of when their children were threatened. The silence that followed was more terrifying than any sound could have been. 12 Zephyrian warships had just fired enough energy to destroy a moon, and their target was completely unharmed. The used Defiant floated in space like nothing had happened at all, its shields glowing brighter with each passing second. Impossible, whispered Fleet Commander XI from his flagship. Our weapons had no effect at all. The human vessel is actually stronger now than before we attacked. Lieutenant Collins looked at her power displays and smiled grimly. Captain, enemy weapons fire has charged our systems to 120% capacity. All weapons are ready for full operation. Commander Veltar stared at the human crew in growing horror. They were not acting like people who had just survived a massive attack. They were acting like predators who had been given everything they needed to hunt. The aliens were beginning to understand that they had walked into a trap. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Defiant to all Zephyrian vessels, Morrison announced over the communication channels. You have just attacked a human ship carrying medical supplies for sick children. You have assaulted our crew members and destroyed medicine that could save lives. This was your choice, and now you will face the consequences. Captain Morrison looked around his bridge at his crew. Dr. Martinez was safely secured in the medical bay, monitoring the precious supplies that remained. Chief Engineer Hansen was watching power levels that would have been impossible just minutes before. Lieutenant Collins sat ready at her weapons station, her hands steady on controls that could reshape the battlefield. Supreme Commander, Morrison said to Veltar, I want you to watch what happens next. I want you to remember this moment and tell your empire what you saw here today. The hull of the Defiant began to change more dramatically. Sections that had looked like simple cargo containers opened like flower petals, revealing weapon systems that defied imagination. The ship that had appeared to be a modest cargo vessel was transforming into something from a nightmare. Target the command ship, Morrison ordered quietly. Let them see what our primary weapon can do. Collins nodded and focused her targeting. Systems on Fleet Commander XI's massive dreadnought. The alien ship was nearly a mile long and carried enough firepower to level entire cities. Its crystalline hull sparkled in the light of distant stars, beautiful and deadly. Nova Cannon charged and ready, Collins reported. Target locked. The Nova Cannon was humanity's greatest achievement in weapons technology. It did not simply destroy targets. It removed them from existence by tearing apart the very atoms that made up matter. When the weapon fired, its target would not explode or burn, it would simply cease to be. Fire, Morrison said softly, a beam of pure energy shot from the Defiant toward the Zephyrian flagship. The beam was so bright that it lit up the darkness of space like a new star being born. It struck the massive alien dreadnought in the center of its hull and passed completely through it. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. The great ship continued to float in space as if nothing had changed. Then, starting from where the beam had hit, the dreadnought began to fade away like smoke in the wind. The entire vessel, with its 3,000 crew members, simply vanished from existence. "Fleet Commander Zexhai, please respond," came panicked voices over the Zephyrian communications. "Fleet Commander, are you there?" But there was no response, because there was nothing left to respond. The flagship and everyone aboard it had been erased from reality itself. "Second target acquired," Collins announced, her voice still calm and professional. "Firing particle beam array." The second weapon system was different from the Nova cannon, but equally deadly. Multiple beams of energy shot from the Defiant and struck two more Zephyrian ships. The beams cut through the alien vessels like knives through paper, slicing them into pieces that tumbled away into space. Commander Veltar watched through the transparent section of the cargo bay as his fleet was systematically destroyed. "Stop," he whispered, then louder. "Stop this madness." "You had your chance to stop," Morrison replied. "You chose to threaten human children instead." The gravity well generators came online next, creating invisible fields of force that pulled three Zephyrian ships together. The alien vessels struggled against the artificial gravity, their engines screaming as they fought to escape. But the human technology was too strong. The three ships were crushed together into a ball of twisted metal and crystal. "Unknown weapon systems detected," came terrified voices over the alien communications. "All ships, retreat immediately." The humans have technology we cannot fight. But it was too late for retreat. The dimensional displacement cannons fired next, opening holes in space itself. Two more Zephyrian ships were pulled into these holes and disappeared into parallel dimensions from which they would never return. In less than 5 minutes. The mighty Zephyrian fleet had been reduced to a single small escort vessel whose commander had been wise enough to power down all weapons and broadcast a surrender signal. Morrison opened a communication channel to the surviving ship and to every Zephyrian frequency he could find. His message would be heard across their entire empire. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Defiant. Today you learned that humans are not the primitive species you believed us to be. You came here thinking we were weak and helpless. You threatened our people and destroyed medicine meant for dying children." The captain's voice carried the weight of absolute authority as he continued. "Let this be a lesson to your empire and to every alien race in the galaxy. Humanity did not reach the stars by being weak. We did not survive by being helpless. We are not your victims and we are not your subjects." Morrison looked at Commander Veltar, whose crystalline skin had turned completely white with terror. "Tell your leaders what you saw here today. Tell them that the species who once fought wars with sticks and stones now commands weapons that can erase entire fleets from existence." The communication continued, broadcast across the galaxy for all to hear. "We do not seek war with other species. We want only to live in peace and help those who need our aid. But when you threaten human children, when you attack human crews, when you try to prevent us from saving lives, you will face our full power." Morrison's voice grew softer but more dangerous. "Remember this moment. Remember that a single human ship destroyed your entire fleet because you chose to hurt the people we protect. Do not make this mistake again." The lone surviving Zephyrian vessel began moving away as fast as its engines could carry it, desperate to escape before the humans changed their minds about letting it live. On the Defiant, the weapon systems began to retract back into their hidden compartments. The ship's hull started to reform, making it look once again like a simple cargo vessel. But everyone who had witnessed the battle would remember what they had seen. Dr. Martinez returned to the cargo bay to check on the medical supplies that had survived the alien assault. "Captain," she reported, "we still have enough medicine to help the children on Colony 7. Morrison nodded and looked around at his crew. They had done their duty and protected their cargo, but the cost had been high. An entire alien fleet had been destroyed because they had chosen to threaten human children. "Set course for Colony 7, Morrison ordered. "Those children are still waiting for their medicine?" The UE Defiant, once again disguised as a harmless cargo ship, resumed its journey through space. But across the galaxy, word was spreading of the day when the Zephyrian Empire learned that humanity was not to be underestimated. Never again would an alien fleet dismiss a human vessel as primitive and weak. They had learned, at the cost of their lives, that humans would go to any length to protect their own.